So Starla, from Barbados. I am Barbadian British. My dad was born in London. I'm currently working as a GP in Newcastle under Lyme.
Yeah. Hi, yeah, I'm Chude. I'm Nigerian British. I was born here. So was my mum. I was born in London. My dad was born in Nigeria. Oh, and I'm currently a master's student at Keele. I'm doing biomedical blood science.
My name is Kofi. I'm from Togo, which is somewhere in West Africa. I moved to the UK, I think it was 2011. I've married a British citizen. Now I'm British, and I currently teach maths at secondary school. Well, I think my first experience of it was I drove past a police car. And the police car went and turned around at the runabout and just followed me. They followed me for like 15 minutes through, like, we got on the A50, came off the A50, Victoria Road, and all of that, all the way to Backnell before they left. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know why they were following me. But it was later on that I sat down and I thought about it. And I realized, oh, are they just following me because I'm black? Or is it because they found out it's not my car? I mean, why were they following me? That was my first experience with it. I went to this Poundland in Newcastle, and at the checkout, because I had a backpack with me to put my stuff in because I wanted to go walking in the town afterwards. And this old gentleman was pointing to me, to the cashier, to check my bag or to something. And the cashier was making motion to him that, oh, it's fine, it's fine. And I stood there for a bit and thought about it. And it was shocking.
When I was working and walking on the sidewalk, and it was definitely an older white British man who probably hasn't really had much experience of interacting with Black people, and him, like, there was lots of space on the sidewalk, but him deliberately stepping off the sidewalk and muttering something about Black people. And
I was actually going to a Christian concert, quite a popular one in London at the time. And two police came up to me. I must have been about 12, 13, and said I fit some vague description or something. And obviously at the time I didn't think about it, but again, is looking back and understanding, oh, they probably are just racially profiling me. I think another one is kind of like I said, I was born in this country, raised in this country, my mom's from this country. And if I introduce myself to somebody who's Caucasian and I tell them, oh, they ask me like, where are you from? Which is a perfectly reasonable question. And I'll say, oh, I'm from London. And they go, where are you really from? I don't understand that question. Like, I was born here. And I think, and I was discussing this with my friend a couple of days ago, is like, white British people don't really see, I don't think they believe that Black people have as much of a claim on England or the UK as they do. They don't see it as we are as much as a British citizen as they are. So then they will go through this whole, oh, where are you really from? Where are your parents from? And it kind of like delegitimizes like the fact that I am a British citizen because, you know, as much as you are, because like I said, we were both born here.
It's simple things like calling you by your real name. When people tell you, oh, that's too difficult to pronounce. And I go, well, it's got English alphabets. It's not Russian alphabets, right? It's KPO and all of that. It's English alphabets. You can read. So long as you can read English, you can read my name. So staff refusing or not being willing to even learn how to pronounce your name or call you by your name. So they will give you a nickname, which is belittling in many ways. The head of the school, the head teacher, told me there was an incident, something to do with online. So they were making, I think it was impersonations of me online and sending it to other people's mobile phones, something like that. And they Googled me and found a picture of me posting it around with some message. It was more painful because you think, oh, these are kids who I'm teaching, who I'm trying to help, give them a future. You can see it in people's faces these days. It's not written, it's not spoken, but it's when you walked into a restaurant, it's how people turn to look at you. I mean, we are human beings. When you see somebody else coming, you look, but it's the way the people look and the length of time that people spend looking at you that tells you, what are you doing here? Sort of thing. Or you're not welcome.
It just feels like we want to make kind of like the atrocities that happened is not kind of England's issue. It's another country's issue. It's America's issue. It was bad over there, but it's not bad over here. I think a lot of British people have a very poor understanding or little to no understanding of England's history. It just kind of seems like we believe in a biblical history that says that one person's sin affects all mankind, but somehow we believe atrocities that happened 600 years ago, all of a sudden, just because of time, disappears and it no longer affects anybody. It seems to be like a deflection of England's and Britain's sins to make it seem like we are like the good guys and everyone there's the bad guys, and you're not being stoned here, so you should be grateful. And it's like, if this country is as much as mine as it is yours, then I should be able to criticize my country for it to be better for everybody. It doesn't seem like we have the same privilege.
So it's a big part of our history, a big part of our curriculum. And I think every Barbadian knows our history, from the entire aspect of the transatlantic slave trade and how Europeans came and basically killed them out and then brought Africans, and the whole journey of the transatlantic slave trade and what happened, like, is so embedded in our curriculum. I was so shocked when I came to university 2004, and a lot of most of my white British friends did not know anything about like the truth about colonialism, the transatlantic slave trade. Like, they were exactly what everyone else had said. It wasn't taught. They didn't know about it. My French friend, she knew about it. I guess the French people, they're educated about their colonies. But yeah, so that was quite shocking to know that the truth wasn't being taught here. And it's almost like that truth was erased from British history, and whether it's because they are ashamed of it and they don't want to, as everyone else has said, they don't want to admit their wrongs.
We've got to teach horrible history. Seriously, we need. I think one of my thing is that one thing I love about the Old Testament is the great that is God. Like, you read about all those kings. Sometimes you laugh and you be like, how can they do things like that? And it's all written. You can read of all of David's misfortunes, how much Absalom slept with his own father's wives, and you can read of all of that nasty stuff. But I think it speaks volume to the fact that your descendants will read of your horrible things you do and think, gosh, I pray I don't have to do that. How can I learn from that? I need not to do that. I want to do better than my father or do better than my ancestors. That's what life should be. But the British curriculum, for example, hides all those nasty things. They sugarcoat it, they removed it. We need to tell, and especially, like, people, I don't know if people wonder why the millions of people in India speak English. They haven't come to Oxford University, to learn how to speak English. It's because we went and forced it on them. So something happened in India. We need to tell people, we need to tell our children that these are the things that we did. Tell them we are not proud of some. We think there are some good. We think there are some bad. But if we can tell them all of it, we will raise up critically thinking people.
That, but I just think like when you have a church that is ethnically diverse, multiculturally diverse, and then you have your leaders that are kind of 95% white, it's kind of like there's a bit of a disconnect there. And I think sometimes we can underestimate how powerful it is and how helpful it is to see somebody that looks like you and like can relate to you better, not necessarily just because of your skin, but by experiences potentially, how helpful that can be. But if I'm aspiring for a leadership position or just kind of any sort of position in any role, not necessarily just a church, but church specifically in this case, and I see 95% white, that could be demoralizing, because just like, well, doesn't seem to be room for somebody like me to be there.
I think it is a responsibility on a church leader to actively engage with the cultures that are in his or her church. And it probably will help enrich the leader and the whole church better. Because if that leader can try and understand, for example, things like if a Black person in your church, predominantly white church, for example, is praying out loud, is that because he thinks God can't listen to quiet prayer? No, it's just that that's how we enjoy doing it. We feel happier, we feel more excited, like the whole experience of being with God is something to be excited about. So we pray loud. For example, most Black people will pray loud, that sort of thing. So it's getting to know the culture.
Like I just think it is important for people to be able to move out of their comfort zone. So, for example, there's a very British way of doing church. Regardless of denomination, there's a way of doing church. And I don't think people mean it to be racist, definitely. And I don't think people mean it to offend. But I think when there's a break from that, people really struggle with it. And whether they consider it a criticism or not, it is criticized. So I'll just give an example of a church that I went to in the UK, and there was a gospel concert, and gospel, largely Black people. And so it was, so yeah, we all went to the gospel concert. It went on for hours. The music was loud, it was vibrant. The preaching was loud and vibrant. And it was just, I guess it was interesting hearing people's comment, because it was like, okay, an hour and a half is gone. Like, why are we still here? Why are we still singing the same chorus like for 2 minutes? So you have all these people who are from different races, from different cultures, different countries, and they have stuff to bring. And you want to embrace that. So you embrace them embrace you. So I just think a part of that will mean moving out of the comfort zone. So it will mean, so for example, if you go to somebody's house and they cook something that you don't normally eat, you know, it will mean that you move out to your comfort zone. So it doesn't have to be as overt or as big as that sort of change, but it's just, I guess it's just retraining your thoughts to, yeah, how can I see the good in this, as opposed to criticize it.
The issues that Black people are saying they're facing, and especially if we talk to a Christian, I think the response is kind of one of two things. If I tell you that I'm experiencing something, right, it's either true and I am, and something needs to be done about it, or I'm lying. Like, I don't think there's room for any other option. I'm either lying, because I'm exaggerating the truth, or I'm just lying, or there is something to what I'm saying. I think if we met everybody's complaint with, first of all, compassion, like people are mourning, people are hurt by this, And it's a shame where the world seems to have a more righteous reaction to somebody being murdered than the church does. Yeah, so it's a bit difficult. So the Black Lives Matter movement, whilst I don't agree with everything the organization does, just the phrase is just what the phrase says. So I'm happy for everyone to call me Chude. It's fine. But I will give you both, more so recently than I did before. I'll say, like, you can call me Ife Chukwude at work, or you can call me Chude. I don't mind. So I'll go to work and I'll say, oh, my name is, if I'm new, my name is Ife Chukwude, or you can call me Chude. And the response will just be, oh, I wouldn't call you that. I'm not going to call you that. Do you have anything else? You already dismissed my name. Like, I haven't even finished it yet. You've already pushed back on it. You haven't even tried to embrace my, like, something that's my name. And for like Nigerians, our names usually have meanings, right? So our names, I think, like, for everybody, a name is part of our identity. Like, I think it can be quite dehumanizing to just be like, I'm not going to call you that. Can I call you something else? And I think, to give people the benefit of the doubt, like most people aren't, I don't think most people are trying to be rude or trying to make you the butt of the joke. But I think it's also, part of it is also about being sensitive, and especially you want Christians to do that, to be sensitive, to be like, not necessarily apologize, but just be like, if I get it wrong a couple of times, like, forgive me. Like, it's okay. I understand that my name is not the most, you're not going to find another Ife Chukwude probably in England. Like, it's okay. I'm not mad that you think that my name is strange to you, but I just think it's like the effort that you will take to, as Starla said, to embrace my culture. And it will take time. The same way it will take time for somebody who comes from, like for me, like, okay, like, it wasn't, when I came to Park, had been reformed for a couple of years, but the worship style was different for me. I had to acclimatize to that because I'm used to loud, vibrant African praise. Even when we do hymns, it's African, like, praise, it's high life, it's so it was a different experience for me, that I had to kind of like, okay, that they do worship differently to how I do it. And like Starla said, it's not bad. It's still making much of Jesus, the same way a Pentecostal church is trying to do. So I think it's, rather than, if you don't get something, ask, embrace, and go through the difficulty of wrestling with it, rather than kind of, even if you don't mean it, be dismissive to somebody else's culture.
So in one of the schools I worked in, I allowed them to just call me Mr. Kofi. Okay. I know people have Kofi as a surname, but it was my first name. But I allowed them to do that because they just said, oh, your surname is too difficult to pronounce. So they will never know my surname. And so I've decided I will never do that again. And I think partly it's because people can be lazy, not wanting to get out of the comfort. I'm a teacher. You've got to learn at least 100 names every single year, right? And I made it my responsibility, or my rule is, I will not shorten a student's name. That alone tells the person you respect them, you take them seriously, you honor them. If you brush it under the carpet, is the easy way out. Two, you yourself, you're not improving your knowledge of the world around you.
I was shocked that it was still there, to be honest. I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe that was still there. But I think the problem was that he was elevated. It wasn't as though people saw anything wrong with what he did. He had all these, these built things named after him. It was almost as though he was uplifted, not seen as actually you played a big part in a very bad part of history.
We need to build massive museums, right? Where one for slavery or slave trade, and one for colonialism or the British Empire, where we put all these statues, because we can't throw them away. We need to keep them. They represent an era of British life. So we need to put them in a museum with a comprehensive, full history.
I think ultimately, the Christian response is the gospel is the answer. The issue I have with that is it can seem reductive, because when we talk about abortion, we don't give that answer. When we talk about sex trafficking, we don't give that answer. When we talk about most other social issues, we don't just say just preach the gospel. Like I imagine, as I've gotten to know you, John, if a woman came to you saying her husband is beating her, you're not just gonna go, okay, bring your husband, let me just preach the gospel to you and off you go. But it seems to be when it comes to race, I'll just preach the gospel and it will sort of disappear. If you look through the Bible, there seems to be a running theme. God continuously reminds the Israelites of their history. He reminds the descendants, and then he reminds the New Testament church of the history of the Exodus and what we should gain from that. Namely, as in Hebrews tells us, like you too will perish if you have unbelief like they do. So if God deems it important that they are reminded that the reason why you're saved is not because of you, but it's because of me, and this is what I did for you, then why do we want to forget our history and how it has shaped our society today? Because it hasn't just come about, we're shaped by our history, the ones that we have learned, the ones we haven't learned. And I do believe the gospel is the answer. I believe it's ultimately the only answer. The law can only change people's physical actions, it can't change their hearts. And ultimately, if we want this racial issue eradicated, then we have to preach the gospel. But I think sometimes we forget that the gospel has imperatives, namely to sum up, love God and love your neighbor. And I think we can't love our neighbors well if we are dismissive to their earthly realities. They bear with one another, and part of bearing one another is me listening, taking the time to listen to you, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Why do Black people feel this plight that seems to be separate from any other ethnicity? Why do they? And where do they get it wrong? Where are we as Black people? Where are we being driven by our oppression? Where are we overstating it? Where is it where we're just being lazy? I think we all have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to be willing to listen to other people who, if a white person criticizes my position, I can't just listen to, oh, you're just being racist, but listening to them as my brother in Christ, saying that they are loving me well. They want to walk with me through this journey. So let me give him the benefit or give her the benefit of the doubt and listen to what she actually has to say before I assume in my mind, oh, they're just being racist, they don't get it. And similarly for white people, rather than just saying they're just Marxists or they want to be oppressed, and let me actually listen to what they have to say. Like, why do they feel this way? And then what can I do? Because I believe that God is redeeming everything, including our lives here on earth. And I think that if we take the time to listen to both sides, we can actually experience part of this gospel unity here on earth, rather than just being dismissive on both sides. So that is my hope. Yeah.